is that the local paper? Well, I wish to speak with your editor, please. Tell him this is Mrs. Hyacinth Bouquet, B-U-C-K-E-T, calling on her mobile phone.
Every day I drop a new video diving deep into the legends of Hollywood's golden age. If you love uncovering the real stories behind these stars, hit that subscribe button, give it a like, or drop a comment. It seriously helps and costs nothing. Thank you for tuning in. Now let's get into this wild story. Dame Patricia Routledge was adored by millions. Yet she lived like a mystery no one could quite solve. She never married, never had kids, and guarded her private life like a locked vault. None of that was by accident. Every choice she made had meaning. And what drove those choices even shocked the people closest to her. Behind all the laughter and fame were quiet decisions that kept the rumors swirling for decades. Those whispers followed her right to the end. Speculation about her relationships, her solitude, and her sudden retreat from the spotlight. But now, the truth about how she really spent her final years is finally coming out. Whether she actually retired, and what made her walk away from one of the most iconic sitcoms just as it hit its peak. The rise of Dame Patricia Routledge was nothing short of legendary. For millions of fans worldwide, she was instantly recognizable. That sharp voice, that perfect comedic timing, and of course, her unforgettable role in keeping up appearances. Patricia became a global name, representing a special kind of British humor, witty, classy, and hilariously absurd. But while the world laughed with her, Patricia's real life was far from the cheerful chaos her character lived through on screen. Behind the cameras, she lived quietly, intentionally out of reach. And long after her hit show faded from television, the old rumors about her personal life and sudden career moves began to bubble up again. After her passing, the truth finally started to surface, revealing a side of her story that had been hidden for years. Patricia Routledge was born in 1929 in Tranmere, Birkenhead, Cheshire, into a humble working-class family. The world she grew up in had no ties to showbiz. Acting wasn't seen as a real career, especially for a young woman without money or connections. Her community valued steady work and simple living, not stage lights and scripts. But even as a child, Patricia showed a love for language, storytelling, and performance. A spark that hinted she was destined for something far bigger than her small-town beginnings. Patricia attended Birkenhead High School, where her sharp mind quickly stood out. She wasn't just bright, she was determined, driven by curiosity and a quiet confidence that made teachers take notice. Later, she went on to study English at the University of Liverpool, where everything began to change. It was there, through humble student theater productions, that she first stepped onto the stage and started performing seriously. Those early days weren't glitzy or grand, but they built her foundation. Discipline, perfect timing, and the power to captivate an audience without any fancy tricks. These skills would soon define her entire career. Breaking into professional theater, though, was no walk in the park. She had no family in the business, no money to fall back on, and no safety net to catch her if she failed. What she did have was raw determination and a few scholarships that barely kept her afloat. Her big break came when she got accepted into the prestigious Bristol Old Vic Theater School, a move that would change everything. The training there was tough, competitive, demanding, and relentless. But Patricia thrived under the pressure, proving she could stand shoulder to shoulder with anyone. Most of her classmates came from wealthier families, but Patricia matched their polish with pure preparation and grit. Yet, even after finishing her training, success didn't land in her lap.
And I would observe how people got laughs, how to pace a scene, all those things, just absorbing it all the time.
Like so many actors of her generation, she hustled for years, performing in repertory theater, joining touring companies, and taking any role she could find. Those long nights and endless rehearsals didn't bring fame, but they sharpened her craft in ways no classroom ever could. Night after night, she faced unpredictable crowds, learned to switch from laughter to heartbreak in seconds, and mastered comedy, drama, and stage presence the hard way. The theater world she entered in the 1950s and 60s was dominated by men. And women like her were often typecast or pushed aside if they didn't fit the narrow idea of glamour. But Patricia refused to fade into the background. She was determined to make her talent impossible to ignore. Patricia Routledge had to hustle harder than most just to be taken seriously, especially when it came to dramatic roles. The industry tried to put her in a box, but she flat out refused to stay there. That determination slowly started to pay off, and when she began performing with the Royal Shakespeare Company, everything changed. Her stage work there earned her real respect, proving she could glide effortlessly between sharp comedy and powerful drama, nailing both classic Shakespearean lines and modern scripts like it was second nature. That unmatched versatility became her trademark. Around the same time, she began dipping into television during the 1960s. A bold move, since TV back then was often seen as second-rate compared to the prestige of theater. Balancing both worlds wasn't easy, but Patricia did it with purpose. She refused to give up the prestige of the stage, yet she also knew the massive power of television and how it could connect her to audiences far beyond theater walls. Then came her international breakthrough, a moment that cemented her as a true star. In 1968, she stunned Broadway and won a Tony Award in New York for her performance in Darling of the Day. That win didn't just put her on the map, it launched her beyond Britain, proving she had global pull. Still, she never let fame box her in. She kept breaking molds, jumping from Shakespeare to musicals to sharp comedies, always chasing the next challenge instead of playing it safe. But it was in the 1990s that she became a name everyone knew. Keeping Up appearances introduced the unforgettable Hyacinth Bucket, or as she insisted, bouquet, a character so hilariously specific, so brilliantly over the top, that she nearly eclipsed everything else Patricia had done. The show made her a household name, but it also came with a catch. The public saw the comedy, while many missed the incredible depth and decades of skill behind it. Even inside the industry, her true range remained underestimated, and she wasn't about to let that slide. By the time Patricia Routledge reached her peak, her reputation was set in stone. She was one of Britain's most respected and versatile actresses. From humble beginnings, she had climbed all the way to the top, earning not only fame, but one of the nation's highest honors, a damehood, for her incredible contributions to drama and charity. But behind all that glamour and applause were quiet sacrifices, painful losses, and whispers that followed her for years.
Oh, boys are always climbing trees. Yes, I know he's 53, but they never really grow up. I once caught Richard playing with a frisbee. He says it was one he'd found, but I've never been sure. Sometimes on sleepless nights when my head's swimming with the responsibilities of organizing another candlelight supper, sometimes I wonder, did he buy the frisbee?
Patricia never spoke publicly about those stories, not the rumors, not the heartbreaks, and many of them only began to surface long after the spotlight dimmed. What few people knew was that her life had been marked by loss long before she ever became a star. Behind the polished grace and calm she showed the world, there was a lifetime of resilience built from heartbreak she rarely mentioned. Her father, Isaac Edgar Routledge, worked as a tailor and haberdasher in Birkenhead, a man of quiet discipline who believed in hard work and practicality. His world was far removed from the theater, yet he was one of the few who never doubted Patricia's dreams. Even when acting looked unstable, he stood by her, offering steady support from the sidelines. He may not have understood the glitz of show business, but he understood drive, and he admired that in his daughter. When he passed away in 1985, Patricia was already a household name on stage and television, yet his death struck deep. It wasn't just the loss of a parent, it was the loss of her last link to the simpler, grounded world she came from. The man who quietly believed in her before the awards, before the fame, was gone. From that moment, she faced everything alone. No parental safety net, no one left from that original circle that shaped her early years. And though she carried herself with poise and confidence, those close to her knew the loss left a silence that fame could never fill. From that point on, whatever came her way, Patricia knew she'd be facing it alone. That fierce independence people admired in her wasn't a choice. It was something life had forced on her early. Her mother, Catherine Routledge, passed away in 1957, right when Patricia's acting career was barely taking off. At that time, she was grinding through repertory theater, constantly moving from town to town, taking any small role she could find, trying to build a name in an industry that offered zero security. Her mother had been the heart of her early world, a homemaker who nurtured Patricia's love for reading, language, and performing long before anyone else saw her potential. Losing her at that critical moment was crushing. There was no safe place to fall back on, no one to lean on when the rejections piled up or when the money ran thin. Instead, Patricia had to keep going, performing, touring, rehearsing, all while carrying her grief quietly behind the curtain. That loss became the blueprint for how she handled life from then on. Friends and colleagues often noticed she never spoke much about personal pain. She simply poured it into her craft. She was the kind of professional who showed up early, nailed her lines, and never complained, no matter what was happening off stage. Her silence about her struggles wasn't coldness, and it was strength. She had learned early that the show must go on, even when your heart is breaking. And then there was her older brother, Kenneth Graham Routledge, a man completely different from the world Patricia lived in. He had trained as a solicitor before giving it all up to become an ordained priest, following a path of faith and duty. Kenneth wasn't just her brother, he was her sounding board, the person she'd turn to when she needed perspective or a dose of honesty. He grounded her, reminding her of where she came from and the values that had built her: discipline, responsibility, and quiet integrity, qualities Patricia carried with her for life. Tragically, Patricia's beloved brother, Kenneth, passed away in 1989, right before keeping up appearances catapulted her into worldwide fame. The timing made the loss hit even harder. Just as her career was about to soar higher than ever, the one person she trusted most, her moral compass, her confidant, was suddenly gone. Without him, Patricia stepped into the brightest spotlight of her life completely on her own, missing that steady voice that always reminded her who she was beyond the applause and the fame. Success came fast than she'd ever imagined, but it came with a price. Suddenly, she was everywhere: interviews, press attention, and endless public curiosity about her personal life. And yet, behind that calm, polished image, she was quietly navigating all of it without her brother's grounding advice. Kenneth had been the one who kept her balanced, the one who made sure the fame never defined her, and now she had to do that alone. People often described Patricia as private, disciplined, and reserved, but that wasn't a performance. It was survival. She had learned long ago that grief doesn't wait for the curtain to fall, and the world doesn't pause for heartbreak. The show must go on. Lines must be delivered, scenes must be played, and cameras still roll, no matter how heavy the loss feels. Even at the height of her fame, Patricia drew a clear line between her public life and her personal world. She'd show up, deliver brilliance on screen, then vanish quietly into her private space, unreachable and mysterious. Very few people knew what her life was really like off camera, and that was exactly how she wanted it. After losing so much, her parents, her brother, her anchors, she wasn't about to let the rest of the world in. Though she rarely spoke about her grief, it shaped everything she did. The roles she chose, her unshakable professionalism, and her total disinterest in the shallow side of celebrity culture. For Patricia, fame was just worthy. That was peace. Even with a career stacked with awards, glowing reviews, and decades of unforgettable performances, Dame Patricia Routledge's path wasn't as steady as it appeared. Behind the spotlight and the polished image were long, quiet stretches where the phone didn't ring and auditions led nowhere. Between major roles, she often found herself wondering what came next, and if the next big break would ever come at all. In later interviews, she admitted there were rough patches, seasons when roles dried up and the future felt shaky. That kind of uncertainty never truly went away, no matter how famous she became. While some actors leaned hard into publicity to stay relevant, Patricia went in the complete opposite direction. She guarded her privacy like treasure, staying away from the endless parties, gossip columns, and camera flashes that so many others chased. Her decision to live quietly sometimes worked against her. Producers and industry insiders didn't always know what to make of her. Some mistook her calm professionalism for coldness or lack of enthusiasm. But in truth, she just didn't play the fame game. Patricia believed her work should speak louder than any headline or red carpet moment. Then came Keeping Up Appearances, the show that changed everything. Playing Hyacinth Bucket, or as she demanded to be called, Bouquet, launched her into a level of fame she'd never experienced before. The character's snobby charm, dramatic flair, and hilarious lack of self-awareness made audiences around the world laugh uncontrollably. The response was instant. Fans adored her, critics praised her, and the laughter seemed endless. But with that fame came pressure, the weight of being recognized everywhere, the fear of being typecast, and the constant expectation to keep topping her own success. Behind Hyacinth's perfect smile and polished manners, Patricia was still juggling the same worries that had haunted her career from the start. What happens when the laughter fades? Behind the laughter and applause, Patricia was carrying a heavy weight, the pressure of being forever tied to one single role. Everywhere she went, people expected to see her. The voice, the dramatic gestures, the iconic catchphrases. What fans saw as fun and flattering eventually became exhausting for Patricia. After decades of mastering Shakespeare opera and serious stage work, she started to worry that the world and the industry would only remember her as Hyacinth Bucket. She genuinely loved playing Hyacinth, the energy, the precision, the humor, but she never wanted that one character to define her entire legacy. And soon, those quiet worries began to show on set. During the run of Keeping Up Appearances, Patricia became known for speaking up whenever something in the script didn't feel authentic. She had a sharp instinct for tone, and when a line or scene pushed Hyacinth too far into slapstick or cartoon territory, she wasn't afraid to call it out. More than once, writers Roy Clark and Harold Snow had to go back and adjust scripts after detailed discussions with her. But it wasn't ego, not even close. Those moments came from a place of pure professionalism and pride. Patricia believed comedy worked best when it was grounded in truth, when the character, no matter how exaggerated, still felt real. If something felt forced or unbelievable, she'd fight to protect that balance, because for her, the craft mattered more than comfort. Still, that kind of dedication sometimes stirred tension behind the scenes. Production schedules were tight, deadlines loomed, and last-minute rewrites weren't exactly welcomed. Yet even with those small clashes, the show's success never wavered. Keeping Up Appearances remained a massive hit across Britain and abroad, which is exactly why, when Patricia decided to walk away in 1995, right at the height of its popularity and with ratings soaring, the decision stunned everyone. Fans, producers, and even her co-stars were left asking the same question. Why would she leave when the world couldn't get enough of her? When Patricia Routledge walked away from Keeping Up Appearances, it wasn't because of drama or scandal. It was her own bold choice. There was no firing, no secret feud, no behind-the-scenes meltdown. She simply decided it was time to move on, and that decision left fans stunned. Whispers started immediately. Some swore she'd had a falling out with the producers. Others claimed she'd been pushed out, and the rumors spread like wildfire. But Patricia stood firm. She made it clear that leaving was a personal decision, one meant to protect her long-term career, not chase short-lived fame. She didn't want to be trapped by one character, no matter how iconic. It was a gamble, and she knew it. Walking away from a global hit meant letting go of steady work, guaranteed visibility, and an audience that absolutely adored her. Some doors opened in new directions, but others quietly closed behind her. And she accepted that trade-off with grace. She went back to what she loved most in the stage, where she continued performing and earning deep respect from the theater world. While she never returned to that same level of mainstream television fame, Patricia seemed completely at peace with it. Fame had never been her end goal. Artistic integrity was. What most people didn't realize, though, was the emotional toll that came with constantly managing everyone's expectations. Fans wanted Hyacinth, producers wanted reliability, and critics watched her every move. Meanwhile, Patricia was fighting to protect her identity as a serious, versatile performer, not just a sitcom star. Her colleagues often described her as disciplined and exacting, someone who demanded professionalism not just from others, but from herself, too. That sharp focus earned her respect, but it also made her seem unbending in an industry built on compromise. And that kind of strength can be lonely. While the public puzzled over her choices, there was still one more mystery in Patricia's life that sparked even more curiosity. The part she never discussed. Her personal relationships and the secrets she kept locked away. One topic always followed Patricia Routledge, and it had nothing to do with her acting. For years, fans and journalists alike kept asking the same question. Why did she never marry? It became one of the most talked about mysteries surrounding her life. She never tied the knot, never had children, and for decades she gave almost no explanation, yet there was never any scandal or secret behind it. Patricia was completely open about it in her own calm, matter-of-fact way. She didn't dodge the question or pretend otherwise. She just didn't see it as anyone's business. In a time when actresses were often defined by who they dated or married, Patricia refused to let her worth be measured that way. She wasn't hiding anything. She was simply protecting what little privacy she had left. There's also no trace of her ever pursuing family life in the traditional sense. She never spoke about wanting children, and if she had romantic relationships, she kept them entirely private. No red carpet hand-holding, no public partners, no interviews teasing secret romances, nothing. She built a wall between her work and her personal world, and she never let that barrier break. For Patricia, the theater wasn't just a career, it was her entire life. Not as some cold trade-off, but as a deep, consuming calling. Acting didn't fit around her personal schedule. Her life fit around her work. From endless rehearsals and grueling tours to late nights on stage and early mornings in costume, she poured every ounce of herself into her craft. For her, that wasn't sacrifice. That was fulfillment. While others chased love stories and domestic comfort, Patricia found her purpose in performance. The applause, the challenge, the transformation, that was where she felt most alive. Acting wasn't something she did. It was who she was. Patricia later opened up about her single life, and she made it clear it wasn't the result of some grand, dramatic choice. She didn't wake up one day and decide, I'll pick career over marriage. It just happened naturally. As she once said, I didn't make a decision not to be married and not to be a mother. Life just turned out like that because my involvement in acting was so total. Her work demanded everything, her time, her focus, her energy, and she gave it all willingly. By the time she stopped to look around, her life had already taken its shape. She was devoted to her craft, and that devotion came with a rhythm that didn't leave much space for a traditional home life. Independence became her foundation. She valued being self-reliant, in control, and answerable only to herself. For Patricia, that wasn't loneliness, it was freedom. Marriage, especially in the mid-20th century, often came with unspoken expectations, and most of them didn't appeal to her. Women were expected to step back, adjust their ambitions, or even define their identities through their husbands. That was never her style. Patricia had seen too many talented women fade into the background after marriage, and she refused to let that happen to her. It's also important to understand the world she was navigating. She came up in an era when the theater and television industries were run almost entirely by men. Women had to fight twice as hard to be taken seriously, to be seen as professionals, not just pretty faces or supporting acts. Adding marriage and all its societal expectations to that mix would have made the climb even steeper. Staying single gave Patricia something few women in her field had: complete control over her time, her finances, her choices, and her career. And she used that control to build a life on her own terms, one defined by purpose, passion, and power, not by anyone else's expectations. Patricia had something many women of her generation never got to experience: complete control over her own life. Every now and then, in rare interviews, she gave small hints about how she truly felt about her choices. And from the way she spoke, it was clear she had no regrets. Patricia found her sense of fulfillment not in marriage or motherhood, but in her work, her performances, and the causes she supported through charity. Her purpose didn't come from fitting into society's mold. It came from doing what she loved, and doing it on her own terms. What stood out most was her calm confidence about it all. She never tried to defend herself or explain why she lived the way she did. There was no bitterness, no dramatic monologue about sacrifice. She didn't see herself as giving anything up. She simply built a life that felt right to her. That quiet self-assurance only deepened her reputation for privacy. By keeping her personal world completely sealed off, she made sure the spotlight stayed exactly where she wanted it. On the work, fans could recite every line from her famous characters, but when it came to the woman behind them, almost no one truly knew her. And that was entirely by design. Patricia mastered the art of mystery. She gave the world laughter and brilliance, but never her private heart. Still, as the years passed, her silence started to stir curiosity. People began to ask the questions she never answered. Was she lonely? Did she ever wish things had been different? Did she regret keeping so much of herself hidden from the world? Those whispers grew louder in her later years as admirers tried to fill in the blanks she left behind. And then, after Dame Patricia Routledge passed away on October 3rd, 2025, at the age of 96, all those unanswered questions came rushing back. The moment the news broke, old rumors resurfaced. Speculation about her relationships, her final days, and what kind of life she truly led once the stage lights went out. When Dame Patricia Routledge passed away, old stories that had quietly followed her for decades suddenly came roaring back into focus. Gossip columns and online threads lit up with speculation, especially about how she had supposedly lived in her final years. But many of those claims painted a picture that simply wasn't true. One of the longest-running rumors suggested that because she never married and had no children, Patricia had lived an isolated, lonely life. People assumed she must have spent her later years completely alone, a sad image that spread fast, especially as she appeared less and less in public. But those assumptions were built on distance from the spotlight, not distance from people. Just because she stepped away from fame didn't mean she stepped away from life. Another persistent claim was that she had grown lonely in her old age, that her single status meant solitude. It was an easy story for outsiders to believe, especially since Patricia had always been so private. But those who truly knew her told a completely different story. Friends, colleagues, and people close to her estate made it clear the rumors couldn't have been further from the truth. After her passing, official statements confirmed that Patricia's final years were filled with warmth, friendship, and connection. When her death was announced, her longtime agent released a heartfelt message. We are deeply saddened to confirm the passing of Dame Patricia Routledge, who died peacefully in her sleep this morning, surrounded by love. That one line shattered years of speculation. She wasn't abandoned, forgotten, or living in isolation. She was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her. She had remained closely connected to friends, neighbors, and the charitable causes that had always mattered to her. Even away from the cameras, Patricia Routledge lived a life rich with purpose and connection. Quiet, yes, but far from lonely. Even in her final years, Dame Patricia Routledge remained as private and composed as ever. One big reason the rumors about her life lasted so long was simple. She never bothered to correct them. She didn't feel the need to justify her choices or explain her lifestyle to anyone. Patricia believed her private life was hers, not public property, and she stayed firm in that belief right until the end. What most people completely missed was just how active and socially engaged she remained once she stepped away from the cameras. Patricia wasn't hiding. She was living quietly but meaningfully. She threw herself into charitable work, especially through the Royal Voluntary Service and similar organizations focused on community care, supporting older people, and honoring public service. Her charity work kept her grounded, busy, and surrounded by people, far from the lonely figure the tabloids imagined. And she never lost touch with the theater world that had shaped her life. Even after retiring from regular performances, she stayed closely connected to her colleagues. She'd attend special events when she could, support younger actors, and keep up with new productions, always sharp, curious, and opinionated. People who spent time with her during those later years often described her as having a razor-sharp memory, a dry and delightful sense of humor, and a real love for good conversation. But of course, with fame comes falsehood, and Patricia had her fair share. Over the years, health rumors followed her like a shadow. Every few years, false reports would pop up online claiming she was gravely ill or worse, that she had already passed away. And every single time, those stories were proven wrong. Either her representatives would issue a calm correction, or Patricia herself would make a quiet public appearance, proving once again that she didn't need to say a word to silence the gossip. Because Patricia Routledge never shared personal details about her health, the silence left room for wild speculation. But in truth, there was never any record of her disclosing a major illness. She handled aging the same way she handled everything else in life, privately, gracefully, and with unwavering dignity. When she passed in 2025, those who truly knew her made it clear just how wrong the old rumors had been. Friends, longtime colleagues, and official statements all pointed to the same truth. Patricia lived her final years exactly the way she wanted. She chose privacy, not loneliness. She chose discretion, not retreat. Every move she made, even in her later life, reflected the same strength and independence that had defined her from the beginning. Still, one big question continued to circle among her fans. Did Dame Patricia Routledge ever officially retire?
I'm going to start with the body. You see, I don't mince words. Time and again, I'm poked in the street by complete acquaintances. Kitty, they say to me, how do you keep so young? Do you perhaps inject yourself with a solution deriving from the placenta of the female gibbon? Well, no, I say I don't, as a matter of fact. I'm blessed with a robust constitution. My father's mother ran her own abattoir. And I've only had the need of hospitalization once. That's when I was concussed by an electric potato peeler at the Ideal Home exhibition.
Or did she simply decide when to stop? For years, people wondered what had really happened after she stepped away from television, once keeping up. Appearances ended and her public sightings became rare. Many assumed she had quietly faded from the spotlight. Some even believed she'd completely withdrawn from the world, vanishing into silence. But the truth, as always with Patricia, was far simpler and far more deliberate. After the peak of her sitcom fame, Patricia didn't make a grand exit or a dramatic retirement announcement. There was no farewell tour, no sentimental press interviews, no teary goodbye special. She just stopped taking on-screen roles. That was it. Quiet, measured, and entirely on her own terms. For a woman who had always protected her privacy and kept her emotions off display, that kind of exit made perfect sense. There was never a need for fanfare or headlines. She didn't crave that kind of attention. Her silence wasn't mystery for mystery's sake. It was consistency. She had always lived by her own rhythm, and when it came time to slow down, she did it the same way she'd done everything else, gracefully, privately, and without explanation. After Patricia Routledge's passing, her family finally confirmed what many had long suspected. She had retired entirely by choice. There was no hidden illness, no quiet bitterness, no burnout behind the decision. She simply reached a point where the constant demands of television no longer appealed to her. The long filming schedules, the press commitments, the endless repetition, she had done it all, conquered it all, and felt absolutely no need to keep proving herself. But her retirement didn't mean she turned her back on acting altogether. Far from it. According to her agent, Patricia's passion for performance never faded. Even after she stopped appearing on screen, she remained deeply involved in the theater world. She regularly attended plays, supported new productions, and championed young talent from the sidelines. Her love for the stage never left her. She just shifted where she put her energy. Her agent released a heartfelt statement that said, "Even at 96 years old, Dame Patricia's passion for her work and for connecting with live audiences never waned. Just as new generations of audiences have continued to discover her through her beloved television roles, She will be dearly missed by those closest to her and by her devoted admirers around the world. That message captured exactly who Patricia was. Someone who deeply cared about her craft and her audience, even long after she stopped performing in front of a camera. She hadn't grown tired of acting. She'd simply outgrown the noise that came with fame. That distinction matters. Patricia didn't walk away because she was weary. She stepped aside because she wanted peace. Television had given her global recognition, yes, but theater was where she truly belonged. The stage had always been her home, the one place where she didn't need flashbulbs or fanfare to feel alive. And even in her final years, that quiet devotion to her art never faded. It only deepened. Even in her later years, Patricia Routledge still lit up when she talked about live theater. Friends and colleagues often recalled how she'd sit in the audience, completely engaged, eyes bright with excitement as she watched new performers take the stage. She followed the theater scene closely and could discuss performances with the same sharp insight and precision she'd always shown. Her fascination with timing, delivery, and storytelling never faded. The love for the craft stayed alive. But the spotlight? That she gladly let go of. This is where the public often misunderstood her story. Because Patricia wasn't constantly seen in interviews or at big events, people assumed she had vanished. But she hadn't disappeared at all. She'd simply shifted her focus. She chose a quieter life that still kept her connected to the world of art and performance, just without the chaos of fame chasing her every move. That decision wasn't just about peace. It was also about legacy. By stepping away on her own terms, Patricia ensured she wouldn't become a nostalgic relic or an overexposed figure desperately trying to relive her peak. Her work spoke for itself, strong enough to stand the test of time without her having to keep performing for attention. It was a move that preserved her dignity and her legend. Still, one lingering question refused to fade from the public's mind. Did she ever regret walking away? Fans couldn't stop wondering if leaving Keeping Up Appearances, the show that had made her a global name, had left her with any second thoughts. The idea puzzled so many because audiences adored Hyacinth buckets so much they couldn't imagine anyone willingly stepping away from that level of success. Everywhere she went, the same question followed her like a shadow. Did Dame Patricia Routledge ever regret leaving the show that made her world famous? It was a question she rarely answered directly, but when she did, her response said everything. After Keeping Up Appearances ended, the silence around Patricia Routledge's decision sparked a wave of rumors. Some claimed she'd grown tired of being trapped by Hyacinth buckets' over-the-top persona, while others whispered that she secretly wished she'd stayed longer, especially as the show kept finding new fans through reruns across the globe. The idea that she regretted leaving became one of those stories repeated so often that it started to sound true. But the real story was far more layered and far more honest. Patricia herself admitted that the period after the sitcom wrapped wasn't completely easy. The public had come to identify her so strongly with Hyacinth that it was tough to move forward without the shadow of that character following her everywhere. Whenever people saw her, they expected that voice, those gestures, and the comedic flair that had made her famous. When she returned to serious stage work, it didn't always get the recognition it deserved. Audiences wanted Hyacinth, not Shakespeare. At first, that adjustment shook her confidence a little, and she never tried to hide that truth. But she made one thing absolutely clear. Uncertainty did not mean regret. Patricia spoke with pride about her time on the show. She said she had no regrets about playing Hyacinth because she understood exactly what the role had given her: global fame, financial stability, and an unshakable place in British television history. She never mocked or distanced herself from the character. In fact, she respected Hyacinth deeply and credited the show for opening doors she'd never expected. But she was equally clear that when it was time to stop, it was her decision and hers alone. She didn't get fired. She didn't lose interest. She simply knew it was the right moment to bow out. As Patricia once put it herself, "I brought it to an end, which of course the BBC didn't care for very much." That single line said it all. She left on her own terms, just like she had lived her entire life. Patricia once explained her decision perfectly, saying, I thought the writer was beginning to recycle old ideas, and I remembered the glorious Ronnie Barker. He always stopped when he was at the height of something and left with people saying, "Oh, aren't you doing any more?" rather than people saying, "Is that still on?" That's the place to be, really.
That quote summed her up completely. She knew exactly when to step back, with dignity, timing, and class. "And I had other adventures to explore," she added. "I'm an actress, and I wanted to take on the stories of other people."
Her reasoning was as sharp as her humor. Patricia believed comedy worked best when it stayed fresh and honest, not stretched until it lost its spark. She didn't want Hyacinth Bucket to become a tired caricature of herself. She also craved new challenges, music, theater, and the kinds of dramatic roles that had shaped her long before sitcom fame ever arrived. Even as fans kept wondering if she regretted walking away, Patricia never wavered. She fully acknowledged that leaving such an iconic show came with challenges. Fewer roles, endless comparisons, and public curiosity, but she always stood by her choice. For her, keeping up appearances was a defining chapter, not her entire story. She closed that door gracefully, with her legacy intact and her sense of purpose unshaken. In the end, Patricia Routledge's career wasn't just about laughter. It was about courage, precision, and knowing exactly when to take her final bow. She left the stage on her own terms, just as she had lived, focused, fearless, and unforgettable. So what do you think? Did Dame Patricia make the right choice by leaving the show when she did? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and check out the next video on your screen for more untold Hollywood stories.